I was not born into riches or privilege. My path began in the quiet countryside, where the air was filled with the rhythm of farmers tilling the land, not the clang of steel. My father, a warrior of modest skill, instilled in me the discipline of arms. But it was not in the warmth of guidance that I found my direction. It was in the harshness of solitude. From an early age, I felt the call of the blade, a restless spirit that urged me to test myself against the chaos of the world. The times were turbulent. Japan was fractured, and the land was caught in endless struggles for power. To live was to fight, and to fight was to survive. I was only 13 when I faced my first duel. My opponent was older, stronger, more experienced, but none of that mattered to me. My weapon was rough, my stance unpolished, but my resolve was absolute. That encounter ended in victory, not because I possessed refined skill, but because I refused to surrender to fear. It was in that moment that I discovered something deeper than mere strength. It was the unshakable will to endure. From then on, my life became a journey not of comfort, but of constant testing. I did not seek out safety within a lord's domain, nor did I bind myself to any single master. Instead, I walked the path of a Ronin, a wanderer without attachments. This was not because I rejected loyalty, but because I knew my spirit would not grow if I allowed myself to remain sheltered. Each village, each castle town, each dusty road was a teacher. Every opponent I met became a mirror, reflecting both my shortcomings and my potential. The world around me was unforgiving. The scent of blood often lingered in the streets, and men were quick to draw their swords for honor or survival. In such a time, hesitation meant death. I learned to read the intent of others, to sense the slightest shift in their breath, the faintest tremor in their stance. The battlefield was not only where steel clashed, it was where minds collided. Understanding this truth was the beginning of wisdom. I carried no illusions that I was destined for greatness. Each day was a trial, and each duel could have been my last. Yet it was precisely this uncertainty that forged my resolve. I embraced the harshness of the road, for it stripped away weakness. I welcomed the solitude of the mountains, where silence taught me patience, and the rivers taught me flow. These were not idle wanderings. They were lessons written into the fabric of the world itself, and I was determined to read them with every step I took. What I carried from those early years was not just the memory of victories, but the understanding that the true enemy was not the man standing before me. The true enemy was the self that faltered, the self that doubted, the self that sought comfort instead of growth. To overcome others, I first had to overcome myself. That is why, even in those beginnings, I sought not only to master the sword, but to master the mind that guided it. The boy who once raised a rough blade against his first opponent was not yet a master. He was only a seed planted in soil rich with struggle. But it was through that struggle that the seed began to grow. And so my journey began. From those beginnings, the road led me to countless encounters where steel and spirit were tested. Each duel was more than a contest of strength. It was a dialogue between two lives, each seeking to prove its worth in the brief moment before blades found their mark. I did not step onto the field for fame or recognition, nor did I tally victories for pride. I fought to refine myself, to sharpen the spirit as much as the sword. Over time, the number of those I faced grew into the dozens, and yet none were able to overcome me. This was not because I relied solely on speed or power, but because I sought always to adapt, to meet every style with an answer of my own making. In battle, I discovered that rigid patterns could lead to ruin. A man who clings too tightly to one form, one idea, becomes predictable, and predictability is weakness. To counter this, I studied the rhythm of combat, the flow of timing itself. I learned that victory often lies not in striking first or last, but in striking at the precise moment when the opponent's spirit wavers. To seize that instant is to hold the heart of battle in one's hand. This pursuit led me to create my own path, a way of fighting with two swords, each hand working as naturally as if they were extensions of the body. Where others saw limitation in wielding two blades, I saw freedom. It allowed me to break through the expectations of my opponents, to disrupt their rhythm and overwhelm their defenses. But more than a technique, it was a philosophy to see from both sides, to balance strength and agility, to embody flexibility even in the heat of combat. Of the many duels that tested this spirit, some remain etched in memory more deeply than others. There was a time when I faced a man known for his elegance, his skill so refined that many believed none could match him. The challenge was set upon an island, where the sea's endless horizon mirrored the vast silence between us. He carried a blade long and graceful, like the wing of a bird in flight. I arrived late, not out of arrogance, but to unnerve him, to shift the rhythm before steel even left its sheath, with only a wooden sword carved from an oar. I struck swiftly, before the perfection of his form could settle into motion. The clash was brief, but decisive. Victory was not in strength alone. It was in reading the spirit, in breaking the rhythm before it could begin. Many men believed the duel ended with the opponent lying defeated, but the truth is different. The true duel continued long after, within myself. Each victory only revealed how much more there was to learn. Complacency is the sharpest enemy of all, and so I pressed onward, never allowing triumph to dull my blade. In all my contests, I sought not to disgrace those who stood before me, but to honor the path we both shared. To cross blades is to entrust one's life to the moment, and in that trust, there is a deep respect. The fallen were not enemies to be despised. They were teachers who revealed another step in my journey. Without them, there could be no progress, no growth, no awakening of the spirit. What I came to understand is that mastery of the sword is not simply about cutting down another. It is about cutting away doubt, hesitation, and ignorance. The blade is a mirror, reflecting the clarity, or confusion, of the one who wields it. To hold it with a pure heart is to reveal truth in its sharpest form. And so the sword became not just my weapon, but the language through which I spoke to the world. The way of the sword was never the only path I walk. Steel alone cannot carry the weight of a lifetime, nor can endless duels provide the whole of wisdom. In the quiet spaces between battles, I sought to understand what lay beyond combat. When the echoes of clashing blades faded, there remained the silence of brush on paper, the stroke of ink forming characters, the slow shaping of lines in a painting. These pursuits were not separate from the sword. They were extensions of the same spirit. Just as the edge of a blade requires balance and precision, so too does the brush require control, rhythm, and clarity of intent. In the stillness of creation, I found truths that no battlefield could reveal. A painting demands patience, for the image does not appear in a single stroke. A poem requires restraint, for words must carry weight without excess. Through these arts, I learned harmony, the delicate balance between strength and gentleness, motion and stillness. In every form of expression, the same principle was present. Mastery comes from discipline, from deep observation, from the willingness to see the world without distortion. It was with this spirit that I set down my thoughts into words, gathering the lessons of a lifetime in the form of a book. I wrote not to boast of victories, nor to recount tales of battles, but to pass on a way of seeing, a way of living. The strategies I described were not confined to the sword. They were principles of timing, perception, and clarity that could be carried into any struggle, whether on the field of war, in the affairs of leadership, or in the inner conflicts of the self. To study them was to study the rhythm of existence itself. The elements of earth, water, fire, wind, and emptiness each revealed different truths. Earth teaches stability, the unshakable stance. Water shows flexibility, the ability to flow around obstacles. Fire speaks of intensity, the fierce strike that overwhelms. Wind whispers of the styles of others, the need to understand and adapt. And emptiness, the final and most elusive, teaches that true mastery lies in what cannot be grasped, the silence between movements, the space where all possibilities exist. In these lessons, I did not seek to create a rigid doctrine, but to offer a path, one that each person must walk with their own feet, guided by their own spirit. There are those who believe the warrior's life is only destruction, but I found that the truest strength lies in creation, to carve wood into a staff, to shape ink into meaning, to let imagination give birth to form. These acts temper the spirit as surely as any duel. The one who holds a sword without also holding the brush is incomplete, for the hand that learns only to strike will one day strike without purpose. But the hand that learns to shape, to write, to build, understands that every action, whether in battle or in art, must serve something greater than the self. Through art, I came to see that the sword itself is not a tool of death, but of clarity. It cuts away illusion. It reveals the truth of the moment. It demands honesty from the one who wields it. In this way, the path of the warrior and the path of the artist are not two, but one. Both demand discipline, both demand courage, and both, when pursued fully, open the way to wisdom. That is why even beyond the battlefield, the way remains alive. As the years passed, and the weight of countless duels and journeys settled upon me, I came to see that the measure of a life is not in how many battles are won, but in what remains when the sword is laid down. The victories I earned did not belong to me alone. They became part of a greater current, flowing forward into the lives of those who would follow. A man's skill fades with his body, but his spirit, if tempered well, can endure beyond time. That endurance is the true legacy of the warrior's path. I did not seek to carve my name into stone or demand remembrance through monuments. The path I walked was not for glory, but for truth. Yet, it seems that truth, once found, has a way of echoing far beyond its first voice. The lessons of the sword, the discipline of the mind, the search for clarity, these have taken root in ways I could never have predicted. Warriors who came after me studied my methods to sharpen their own blades. Artists and thinkers drew upon my words to strengthen their resolve. Even those who never lifted a weapon found meaning in the idea that strategy, perception, and adaptability can shape every struggle of life. What surprised me most was how the spirit of the way could reach beyond the battlefield into realms I had never walked. Men of trade, leaders of armies, seekers of wisdom, all found value in the principles I sought to express. Timing, rhythm, adaptability, the courage to face uncertainty. These are not bound to the clash of steel. They belong to anyone who must act decisively in the face of challenge. In this way, the path of the sword became more than combat. It became a mirror for human life itself. As generations turned, stories of my journey grew and traveled. Some became myth, others legend. Yet beneath the layers of retelling, the essence remained that a man, through discipline and unwavering spirit, can shape his own destiny. I did not live to be remembered as flawless or untouchable. I lived to show that growth is forged in struggle, and that clarity comes only to those who pursue it without end. If my story endures, let it not be seen as the tale of a man who could not be defeated, but of one who refused to stop learning, who never turned away from the challenge of facing himself. The influence of this way cannot be measured in victories, or in the weight of reputation. It must be measured in how many have been inspired to walk their own path with courage. Whether they pick up a sword, a brush, or the burdens of daily life, what matters is that they face the world without hesitation, that they remain steady in chaos, and that they find within themselves the strength to move forward when fear would hold them still. In the end, no life is without end. My body, like every man's, returned to the earth, but the way continues in those who carry it onward. A path walked with sincerity leaves footprints others can follow. And if those who walk after me discover not only strength, but also clarity, discipline, and peace, then my journey will not have been in vain. That is the legacy I leave behind.